Broadcasts of the City of Neenah Common Council meetings are produced by University Studios of the University of Wisconsin-Fox Valley. Neenah residents can get information about City Council meetings, City Committee meetings, meeting agendas, and other documents via the City website, www.neenahgov.org. Neenah residents can express their opinions about city issues or about these broadcasts by contacting the mayor's office, contacting their city alderman, or by completing the electronic feedback form on the city website, www.neenahgov.org. All public portions of the meetings are recorded in entirety and are not edited for playback.
Welcome. I would like to call to order the special common council meeting. This is the budget public hearing for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018 to order. The first item of business tonight will be the roll call. Members are to answer the clerk as your name is called and sign in on the roll call machine, please.
Alderman Boyette. Here. Bates. Here. Hillstrom.
Here.
Lendrum.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Lang.
Here.
Steele.
Here.
Boons.
Here.
And Stevens.
Here. Tonight's, and I'd like Al to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight will be led by a person who's going to have his last budget hearing, Alderman Hillstrom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Maybe not, right, Lee? See how this one goes? All right. Welcome to each and every one of you, and thank you for coming. Tonight is the 2019 budget public hearing. So the first item of business will be a public hearing on the proposed 2019 operating budget and the 2019 capital improvements program, and then also establishing a transportation assessment replacement fee, which we have called acronyms of TARF. And then after that, after the public hearing, council may elect to answer any questions that there are, and then we will go into the discussion and consideration. If it's all right at that point, then I would like to lead off with a few comments about the budget, as I normally do. So with that, I think I will open the public hearing on the proposed 2019 budget, operating budget, and 2019 capital improvements program budget, and the establishment of a transportation assessment replacement fee. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council on anything related to that? Just ask if you state your name and address so we have it for the record. Anyone here who'd like to address the council? We historically, we give the public the opportunity beforehand. This council has been a little bit open to that at the time. After we do a little, if you have something compelling or want to address the council or ask a question, if the council says it's okay, we'll open it up. Okay? How's that? All right. So no one would like to address us at this time on the budget public hearing. So we will move on to item number 2, which is discussion and consideration of the public hearing and other matters relating to the budget. I think we'll start out. Can't remember. We'll start out with the report from the Finance and Personnel Committee. There's a report. Are you going to give that report, Marge?
Nope, that would be, that's me.
Okay.
Thank
Tammy
you,
will.
Mayor.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Alderman Erickson. Go ahead.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Mayor. The report from the October 29th, 2018 Finance and Personnel Committee. The committee recommends council approve Resolution 2018-24 establishing a TARF and authorizing certain exemptions for property owners that were subject to a special assessment in the city in the past 5 years, and capping the TARF at a maximum of $1,980 per parcel assessed, conditioned on the passage of ordinance 2018-17, and to refer the recommendation to the Special Common Council budget hearing and adoption meeting on November 13th. And I so move.
There's a motion by Alderman Erickson, seconded by Alderman Coons, to approve resolution number 2018-24, which will establish the transportation assessment replacement fee and also authorize certain exemptions for property owners that were subject to this special assessment during the past 5 years, capping the TARF at a maximum of $1,980 per parcel assessed. And this is because the council previously had passed ordinance number 2018-17. So I will open it up to discussion. First person is Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I make my comments on this resolution, I just want to remind everyone that the copies in the back are drafts, not the final copy. It doesn't say draft on the cover. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, so getting back to this resolution about the TARF, all my amendments and motions in the past have been about the math, about the numbers. This one, I can't make the math work in my argument. This one is about principle, and I feel like we are insulting the affected residents that have had their street assessed, and when we have a 5-year waiver, granted that's not very much money for us, but it's also not, and it's not very much money for them, but a 5-year waiver after being hit with a $4,300 bill saying that, oh, you don't have to pay the $22 for the next 1 to 5 years, to me is an insult. And when the mayor asked other communities what they did, and they all answered that they just started it cold, and too bad. And the residents just have to deal with it. And, you know, frankly, I don't care what other communities do. I only care about our residents. So I would like to amend this motion to make the TARF requirements from a 5-year waiver to a 10-year waiver. I also want to add really quick that I want to remind the mayor to continue working with staff. How's that? I want to remind the mayor to continue to work with staff to add in the utilities at some point. And I know it's probably not going to be done in the next couple months, but maybe we can start talking about it maybe in the beginning of the year and try to get those numbers nailed down. Because if you think about it, you know, this will be a reduction, but instead of a $4,300 bill, they'll get a $3,000 bill. So that's not, we didn't solve this problem for our next residents. So it's almost disingenuous to say that this TARF is taking care of the large assessment. It's not. They're still going to get hit with a large bill. So that's my motion.
Second.
We have it. All right. Thank you, Alderman Lundrum. Alderman Lundrum moves, seconded by Alderman Boyette, to amend the resolution to include a 10-year period with regards to not paying the Transportation Assessment Replacement Fund. I assume that the same levels on the 5-year, 4-year, 3-year, 2-year will just be doubled. 10 years for those that paid this past 2018, 9 years who paid for 2017, right?
I just want to extend it out 10 years. And, if we already have the software developed to do the 5-year, it'll take no more effort, a couple buttons being pushed for that last 5 years. So the initial work will be developing this, program
Yep.
for the waiver in general.
So what I'm asking is, the residents who've been impacted
Yes.
the last 5 years will get 10-year
Yes,
waiver
instead.
of, I'm not saying this correctly because that isn't how it works. So because of the graduated scale of how many years you would pay. So under the current 5 years, someone who had it done this year would not be subject to it for 5 years. If they had it done last year, it would be subject to 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Under your proposal, it would be 10 years, someone would be 9 years, someone would be 8 years, someone would be 7, correct?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
I'm not trying to tell
No,
you
I'm fine
motion.
with that. I'm working to compromise here.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Or
I'm
not.
clear on that.
Right.
The information that I provided to the council late last week, comparing the exemption options, I was assuming that we'd be going back to 2009 projects. So 2009 assessed projects would get their 10-year exemption, so basically they get a 1-year
I'm
exemption.
fine with that. Because
Okay.
that's 10 years out.
Well, I guess I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that was your
No,
intent.
I'm clear with that. That's 10 years out.
Okay.
That's all I ask.
So I'm just trying, I want to make sure everyone here understands the motion. So people who had assessments 10 years ago would get 1 year?
They'd get nothing if it was
Or
10
people
years.
with 9 years ago would get 1 year of, okay? All right, that's fine. So there's a motion and a second on that. All right. Next speaker will be Alderman Bates.
My comment did not have to do with this issue, so I'll,
Okay? That's
Yes.
fine, thank you, yeah. And then Alderman Erickson on this issue?
Mine is the same as Marge. It's not in regards to this.
Okay. Is that okay if you wait then? Okay. Alderman Coons?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things here. So Alderman Linder pointed out this is only taking care of the road part. And she mentioned the utilities, but utilities, the Finance Department's committee has already formally requested utility work to be done. That work is being done. That had always been part of this process, understanding that if you take care of the roads, you take care of 60% of the cost, roughly, depending on the yard, the size of the yard. And so utilities need to be worked out, particularly sanitary sewer. Water being oversaw by the state becomes a slightly different animal. The other thing about utilities too is we're going to look at utilities, and there's an opportunity. I don't know what that opportunity will be, but there's an opportunity then to do something there as well, because that's part of the cost for this whole thing as well. So it might be a 22 whatever dollar reduction here, but it could be something else from a utility standpoint. Because again, they both go together. We haven't got to that point yet, so I don't know what that is. A couple questions. There was a memo sent out by Director Kaiser suggesting that if we went this route, that we would increase the fee to hit the $400,000 mark. We'd increase the fee to $22 to $24. I don't know if that's part of the motion or not part of the motion. To keep the dollar amount at 22 is part of increasing it to $10 to 10 years. That'd be one question I'd have. And I guess for me, 5 years made sense for two reasons. For some people, they were paying payments out for 5 years, and so it's one thing to have to pay a transportation fee. It's not a huge amount. It's another one to have to do that while you're still making payments. At the same time, any shortfalls because of people being exempt, we were also still collecting money for our debt service, our normal process, to help cover that. So those costs were covered. So those couple reasons made sense. The other thing is, and I guess I look at city attorney, I know you brought up the issue of an equal something or other clause, how you have to treat everyone equal, and you can't.
Uniformity.
Yep, uniformity, and you have to treat everybody. So my question is, do we run into any issues if we went to 10 years with that clause?
No, because it would apply, as it's currently stated, it would apply to all assessed property owners equally and on the same sliding scale. So there would not be a uniformity issue because it would be uniformly applied across the board.
So you see no problem with it?
No,
Okay.
not legally.
For me, I mean, I think the overall plan I'm in favor of, and how we get there, I'm happy to support. So if it comes down to 10 years is the only way it's going to work, whatever, I don't care. I did like the idea, and I'm not sure in the mayor's clarification in that you go back over the last 5 years and they get 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. There is no program for this, is my understanding. My understanding is Jerry's going to have to go with this mighty little spreadsheets and start going in and trying to, it's all going to be spreadsheet driven in Jerry's office with little highlighter pen marks on it, keeping track of this. Because we're not going to write a code for this to somehow magically work it. And so the number does change from, I don't have the sheet in front of me, unfortunately, but from some roughly just under 800 to 1,500 roughly people. And I worry about keeping that organized. I also worry about someone selling their house and going, and 5 years later going, why is this fee? Where do I get this fee from? Well, we hadn't been charging you because this is exempt property, on and on and on. So those things concern me. Again, people are, we can talk about not being fair. What's not fair is that we've been charging this and we've been doing it. I think it's great we're moving forward. And what has stopped a lot of people, a lot of times it seems, is this whole issue of what do you do with people. You can't, just because it's a bad system before, we can't continue to do another bad system because we want to treat everyone poorly. I mean, so we're going to have to make that change. I rambled on there. I'm sorry, but to me, I'll probably not support this. Look at the 5-year, but I'd be happy to go with the 10-year if that's the will of the council.
Council President Stevenson.
Okay, so I'm going to Alderperson Kuntz ask the specific question that was the same as I was going to ask. Resolution 2018-24, as was presented with the agenda, shows a infrastructure fund for 2018 that showed $400,000, which I'm assuming is the target for 19. Also has a TARP fee for each ERU at $22. So, and then Jerry's memo to the council on November 8th, where he, and the resolution also references 5 years of exemption. Jerry's memo on November 8th indicates that we have a revenue target of $400,000 with a TARF projected at $22, but there was no exemptions included with that. So then he goes on to says under alternative 1, which would be the 5-year exemption, which I understood was part of the recommendation. Mm-hmm. The TARF is short $66,000, and then he references a $23 per ERU target. So I am assuming that the original motion would have set a TARF level at $23, and that the motion to amend, which then is the third issue in your memo of November 8th for those in the crowd, would indicate a $24 TARP if we would enact the motion as it currently exists on the floor, which is 10-year exemption. So it's costing non-affected property owners an extra $1 a year. And then you have the whole ancillary problem of 10 versus 5. So, is everybody clear on that? Mm-hmm. Jerry's $22 number that we talked last week was assuming no exemption. With a 5-year exemption, we go to 23. And as Alderperson Lendren's amendment on the floor would move it to 24. Okay. Clear. second question then, and it's a process question, and I'm pretty proud of my understanding of process, but this is new for us, so I don't understand the process here. If the council approves resolution 2018-24 with a $24 TARF, and then goes into budget deliberations and doubles the size of project, we aren't going to do that. But if we would amend the capital projects to a number that would require higher TARF levels, how do we do that?
It would be a matter if there was a need for adjusting those TARF levels because this is not part of the tax levy, it's part of the utility bills. There would be the possibility of going in and amending that prior to the first of the year to adjust for the revenue.
So if we modified the budget, the existing mayor's recommended budget, and the infrastructure requirement would go to 500,000, we would have to address the $100,000 revenue shortfall somehow, either by increasing borrowing,
yes,
or TARF. I mean, I'm just telling you, we have options of how to do that. We've eliminated the concept of borrowing, so we would have to adjust our TARF at that point. We have to go back and do that. In future years, I'm wondering if we shouldn't deal with the TARF after we have the budget approved, so that we know what the dollar amount is, and then we TARF it. And I'll support all the person 10 years.
Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe I asked this question in the budget hearings. When we say we have exempt property owners, it doesn't specify whether it's residential or commercial or tax-free. Do we limit that to one or the other in your calculation?
In the calculations, there is no limit as to the land use of the property because all land uses are special assessed for street work.
But if you had, we have like my church, St. Gabriel's, was just assessed this year, and if they were, I'm not sure where they are, but I'm sure they're higher than the $22. So over 10 years, that's going to be a lot of money, isn't it?
That particular property, we have relatively few of those every year. The bulk of the properties impacted by our work is residential. Last year, the Cecil Street project, we had some commercial work for some commercial properties, but really the vast bulk of the properties we're affecting are single-family residential.
So the impact of this particular project, is that included in your 66,000 and your 100 and?
Yeah, as I put in the note, I just went on a per parcel basis and used an ERU of 1 for each of the properties. So certainly there will be some variation off those numbers depending on their actual number of ERUs. But I felt at least for the purposes of getting off the ground on an estimate, that was going to be as close as we need at this point.
The other question I had was for the 1980 max, when we're dealing with trying to figure out, I had the impression that we were going to have the 24, 23, 22 worked on in finance before it was, I didn't think they were all linked together. I thought they were going to be, we passed the idea and then we figure out what the figures were actually going to be. And my question before was the 1980 specified in here as being a maximum for properties. I'm just wondering if we now have situations where we're exempting certain properties for 10 years and they're a commercial property, then the 1980 max, I mean, it might need to be bumped up. And to have it just hard-coded into the resolution is a little disturbing, I guess. I guess I don't understand why that number's in there, but not the 23, 24, 22.
Well, I think if I'll just touch on that.
Yep.
I think there was an intent to have a cap of roughly $2,000 as a maximum for any parcel. So that's essentially setting the cap for any the TARF assessment for any one parcel.
And then got moved to 1984.
That was really just an adjustment once we came to the $22 per ERU fee. that was the nearest round number for the number of ERUs. That equates to 90 ERUs on a parcel. So it's something relatively easy to calculate.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
If
Director
I'm
Easker.
following Alderman Bates' concern on that number, I think I would agree with you that if $22 brings you to 1,980, if you go to 23 or 24, the $1,980 number changes. You're still going to use 90 ERU as sort of the max. So if for example, if the TARF becomes $24, that number is $2,160 as a max. Still going to keep the same formula that you get to that number. So it's certainly, you're right, we've got some kind of fluid things going on here depending upon what decision is made on the exemption or the forgiveness, and then everything kind of flows from there. So quite frankly, I don't, it's financially, it would make more sense to, if one changes, they all change proportionally the way we calculate it from my perspective.
Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer a few questions, at least from my perspective, originally this was with a 5-year exemption, $22. Again, the understanding that this is all going towards debt service, and we're still collecting for the next 5 years on debt service through our old process, which would, in a sense, make up any deficit there. The other thing about how we do this, in which order, I think the way to look at this, particularly the way we're doing it now, if it's against debt service, that 35% should really be what we spent last year. In the sense that that way it stays in order, and you don't have the flip-flop issue. And so we always look at what we spent last year on that. 35% of that's our goal for this year, going towards debt service. That should work and get an even flow. We don't specify which year, we don't in that kind of detail in this piece. And I guess what I would do also with the maximum TARF assessment, I would probably change that to maximum TARF assessment and put that in terms of ERUs and be at 75, get rid of that dollar number altogether. I would probably make that motion once we get past this one.
Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions for Director Kaiser. We had talked about this briefly at the budget workshop, but I don't think it was resolved. The exemption is a 5-year exemption for residential owners, correct?
The way I've laid it out, it's an exemption for any property.
So
it can be commercial property, could be residential property, could be, as you mentioned, a tax-exempt property. So,
I'm going to just use this as an example because they're no longer there. Randy's Auto Service on the corner of Commercial and Cecil. He was assessed for when the street went through on Cecil and then when it went through on Commercial.
Yes.
So he would get exemptions for both of those years. Is that correct?
They were more or
and that
less-
would be the same $22 credit, the same as a residential?
I don't know what his exact ERU number is on that parcel, but it would be whatever that ERU number is times the rate, and it would. He would have had, if my timing's right here, he would have had a couple years of them running concurrently, and then so the 2017 project, that would be the more recent one. So he'd have 5 years from that for the remainder.
Okay, so if you can just explain to me the ERU unit for his property, just basically what type of credit would he be getting?
Well, I'd have to look his up. I would guess his
Approximately.
for that parcel is probably in the basically all hard surface. So I would say maybe 3 ERUs. So that would be if we have the 5-year exemption number at $23, that would be a $69 credit per year.
Okay. Thank you.
We just did a test here to see if the mayor pressed his button. work, so to get in the queue. But so we're all making great questions here, but I just would like us to take a step back. I mean, Alderman Lundrum, I applaud, what you're trying to do and looking out for the constituents and the taxpayers and everything. But a lot of hard work has went into this. We are breaking new ground in the big picture. This is something that I think other communities may look to us as a leader in this and maybe do this themselves, because there's already calls into my office to get the specifics of this if it passes. This is going to help homeowners all throughout this city. I mentioned the last time, each and every one of us who has sat out in that rotunda and watched the looks of people's faces when they've seen these $4,000, $5,000, and $6,000 assessment bills in November, whenever they, it was just difficult and tough to sit here and watch their reaction knowing they had to pay this. Yes, I have made a commitment to work on the utility portion of this, the water, the stormwater, and even help this even more. We're not going to catch everybody. We're not going to get everybody happy. I had people, all throughout this community who, this is a 80%er. People support the concept that we are doing here tonight. And most people, they recognize the attempt at principle of 5 years. And this was built on a 5-year plan. The farther you go out, that person might not even own that home anymore. So the new person is going to get the benefit, as I understand it, because it goes with the home. So Randy's auto, Randy's not going to, he paid for that, and he's not going to get the benefit. The new person is going to get the benefit under 5 or 10. But the longer you take this out, the more chances that homeowner is going to say, oh, what is this for? So there's no right or wrong answer here, but I think we're just making it more difficult for staff. We're making more difficult for homeowners. There's going to be more questions. And with all due respect, I've asked other communities. They didn't look out for the taxpayer and the person like we are doing. We're on, by principle, we're saying for 5 years. And whether it's $110 or it's $220 under the proposed amendment, I don't know if you're going to garner anything better. So I think people have recognized that it's time to draw that line in the sand. It's time to say we're going to go to a new system here in Neenah. We're going to make it more fair. Everyone uses our roads, and everyone should pay, and no one's going to get saddled with a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or more assessment. And the 5-year, my preference, quite frankly, would be to stay at $22. I do understand that with this 5-year exemption, I've been telling everyone, Rotary, everywhere I speak, that it's approximately $20 to $22. So it's a little tough to even say it's going to go to 23. The council has done a good job of, within the legislation that we're passing tonight, saying that that's going to stay for 5 years. We have built in what we believe is enough cushion where we're going to be okay for 5 years and still have an aggressive road rebuilding program in this state. So I would strongly ask that we stay with the 5 years, we take the victory lap, and we have done our job, and we've looked out for the taxpayers, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. Because quite frankly, I know that I'm going to run into someone, you're going to run into someone and say, 10 years? Well, I paid $4,000. It should be 20 years. Because this isn't even getting me close to even. So I would just ask that we would stick with 5 years. Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been asking for this for years now, ever since I digested the South Commercial assessments And at the time, they were $2,400 for those people on South Commercial, and I was appalled then. So that's about when I started to ask for this. So before you do your victory lap, let's talk to the people on Adams and Geiger and Richard and all the other streets that have been done. And I'm just going to send them to your office and say that now that they save, after they paid $4,300, they'll be saving $108 for 5 years. And I get that I'm just doubling that, and I get that those numbers are ridiculous. That's what I said in my opening statement. It is not the math. It's insulting to say, oh, well, you don't have to pay the next $108 even though you just paid $4,300. So I frankly don't care what other communities do. I do care that many of the streets we have done recently have very modest working class homeowners on these streets. These are not wealthy streets. So before we make the argument on it's going to be complicated for staff, I think that's also an insult to our staff. I really don't think that Director Kaiser is going to be in there with his highlighter. I think that's an insult to him.
Alderman, there's no one insulting anyone here. Let's keep it civil, please. I did not make any innuendos about your amendment.
No, the victory lap.
And I don't appreciate,
let's not say
saying
it's
that I'm insulting anyone. I'm the person who brought this forward to help, the citizens in this area. So if you just refrain from.
And I've been asking for it for years, but just to say
I get that, but I don't appreciate.
I understand, but let's not call it a victory lap for the residents that just got their assessment bill.
Yep. Okay. Apologize. All right. Anyone else? And I want to say your passion has been there for a long time to make this change, and I have told hundreds of people that you've wanted this change. So there's been a lot of people that this change is a long time coming, and I appreciate the passion. So, seeing no one else, there is a motion by Alderman Lindrum, seconded by Alderman Boyette, to, in effect, change this from a 5-year to a 10-year exemption. And just to be clear, does part of that motion, Alderman, then take this to a $24 tariff?
$24, yep.
Okay. He's the person making the motion, so
if that's what the math requires.
I want it to be your motion, so.
Yes, $24 is fine.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I don't want to put words or anything in your mouth.
Second.
Yep, second's fine with that.
Okay, good. I just want to be sure, because that's the impact of it, okay? So.
It's a quarter.
And it doesn't necessarily have to.
It's a quarter, a quarter.
She doesn't necessarily have to do that, but then there'll be a shortfall, correct? Go ahead.
And again, just clarify, I think words are important, and how we talk about this is important. When we're talking about $220 or whatever, keep in mind that's not, it's a sliding scale. We need to remember that. If you got an assessment 10 years ago, you're not getting $220, you're getting, or $240, you're getting $24. Okay? Let's remember.
Say that again? Just the last sentence.
Under the proposal, there is a sliding scale. If you got an assessment 10 years ago or in 2009 or whatever it was, you're not getting 10 years of forgiveness, you're getting 1 year. You're not getting $240, you're getting $24.
Right.
48 and so on. Let's just, so because I think we're talking about, 110 or 220 or whatever.
Right.
That's not, I don't want the public to think that that's is the case either.
Okay? The only people that are getting them are the people that had it done in 2018.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Everyone else is getting less. So, yeah, I think it's important just to make sure the numbers. You're the numbers guy, Mike, so thank you. All righty. So on the motion by Alderman Lindrum, which was seconded by Alderman Boyette, with the clarification, all in favor of Alderman Lindrum's motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion fails. 4 ayes, 5 noes. Okay, that brings us back to the
Original.
Original motion. Discussion, Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to replace the 1980 per parcel assessed to go along with how our Director of Finance generally was defining it as a cap of 90 ERUs. Is that what you were?
That was how the calculation works. So if that would then bring that number in a 5-year, again, it all depends upon if you can make it 90 ERUs and I'll give you the amount, then that's what you want.
That would, and I believe it was Alderman Coons that said go for the ERUs as opposed to trying
Sure.
to figure it out.
And it would be, but I think it would be a good idea to
Also know.
put that number there so that
Both
everyone-
numbers.
Yes, so 90 ERUs, if you're going to stay at $22 as 1980, going to go to $23.
We're at 23 now as the motion.
Is
It's a 5-year exemption, right?
right, but the original motion I think was still at 20.
But it's still never defined.
Was my specific question.
Okay.
Under the original piece of, under the original bill, the number, if you did the 5-year exemption, under Jerry's calculations, the TARF per ERU would need to be $23. Is that correct?
That was in the memo that I had sent to, or the email that I had sent to the council.
In order
I
to
guess
stay,
the question, as I hear Council President Stevenson talk, the resolution specifies $22. And there has been no motion to this point to modify that number.
yeah,
And-
okay, so
yep.
Todd, Alderman Stevenson's correct, so it's $22. And I would, in a $22 ERU, at 5-year exemption, would be $66,000 short of our planned $400,000 per year. So over 5 years, we would collect approximately $2 million, and we'd have a
Less 66,000.
less
Correct.
66,000. So I would just say, I think we can manage the $66,000 probably fine, but if we would like to go to 2 million or to 23, I'm fine with that too, but I believe on a $2 million, you're going to collect $2 million over 5 years, being short 66,000, I don't believe is going to impact us that much. There'll be some interest, I presume, and things like that, right, Mike? There'll be some interest saving accrued that might help with some of that shortfall. Alderman Steele.
Yes, I guess my concern is I don't have a good sense of how many businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, have had their assessments for street repairs over the past 5 years. And if we have a maximum of assessment of about $2,000, forgiving that for 1 to 5 years may have an outsized impact on the deficit that we're thinking, that you're talking about. And I'm just not sure that calculating this as if the only people impacted are residents not having to pay $23 a year or whatever, we might be underestimating the deficit. Is that?
You're talking about if properties that have more than one ERU are a part of the forgiveness
That's
program?
correct. That's correct.
There would be, it would be another dollar amount that we would receive that would be less. That's correct, because they would receive 23 times the number of ERUs. That's correct. So again, the resolution, and I guess, we can look back at that. I think the resolution has some numbers in there that need to be, we're more approximate numbers than they are exacting numbers. And maybe we need to acknowledge that as part of this, is that we're in the, in that very close range to these numbers, but we're not going to hit everything exactly to the dollar, given the potential changes that are being proposed. And as Jerry said, given the fact that he gave you a calculation based on one ERU. So from my standpoint, I'm fine. And again, someone else brought up, and that is a very good point, while we are collecting this money, we're also collecting special assessments for the next 5 years, which simply give us an additional amount of money than what we technically need on this funding. So I think you guys are this close. I don't know that we need to beat this to death. We're very close to that number, no matter what you do. If you do $23 or if you do 5-year forgiveness, or $22 and 5-year forgiveness, I'm fine with the motion as it's written in the spirit in which.
Okay, Alderman Boyette.
I just have a concern because it seems like we're going into this with a deficit and we're trying to predict our future, and we can't do that. I mean, we've had major things happen nationally with our economics, and we don't even know what's going to happen locally with our economics in the future. So for us to start this off with a deficit and it's okay, I just have an issue with that because it doesn't. I wouldn't do that at home with my own checkbook. I wouldn't feel right doing that with taxpayer money.
Alderman Kunz.
Thank you, Mayor. I think when our when Director Easker tells us we're fine, I know how he likes to have money in the accounts. So he's not one to like deficits at all. So there's a couple things. One is this amount, 400, was set a little higher because we were trying to keep it even for the next 5 years. And we've got in the resolution in the ordinance. There's also a piece in there saying, hey, if we have a deficit, we can pull money from other sources and then repay that back. So we have the ability to always make ourselves whole through this fund if we need to. So I think they built enough cushion in there. Again, still getting in dollars. Mike could tell us, I think that number was roughly still, they'd say, in the $100,000 range a year coming in from special assessments already. So we have a nice cushion. This will change at some point for 5 years. Hopefully we're doing more streets, all kinds of things, and we can always address it. We can look at what we did last year, take 35%, figure out what that fee is going to be, do a rolling average. We can do something that kind of evens that out, but we have the ability to even it out. We have the ability to hit shortfalls and have a mechanism to help pay ourselves back. So I think we're covered in multiple directions. There was a beginning of a motion to amend that seemed to, I don't know what happened to it. And I don't know if we want to address that or if we have a...
I was kind of waiting and then it never... I'd like to make a motion to change the maximum of 1980 to a maximum of 90 ERUs, and then the amount can be figured out from whatever we use as our unit cost.
And that would equate to $2,070
with a 23
with a $23.
Thank you.
Yes. Which we haven't gone to yet. That's correct.
I mean, if you want to do it now, it's fine.
That's the first step. I just kind of want to get that out of the way because the 1980 is just too tied to nothing.
But then you'll also have to go to $23.
I'd like to, but I'm doing one step at a time.
Might not be able to.
All right. It would be the exact same thing if I didn't go to 23. It would still be 1980. I am just making it so it's more. If you'd like, I will stack it. I'd like to make a motion to change it to 1990 ERUs for the maximum of per parcel assessed. And then to accommodate the 5-year exemption, I would like to change the yearly fee, which is not even listed in here. I guess it's in the whole ordinance, the resolution, thank you, to $23 a year.
Second.
I already seconded it. I still second it.
Blindly, thank you.
There's a motion by Alderman Bates, second by Alderman Steele. I'd like to say, go ahead, Alderman Stevenson, I'll go after you.
Well, I don't need to make any comments now that I credit Alderperson Bates for trying to make Resolution 2018-24 have some relevance and accuracy, because we don't have it. We're showing a target amount for 2018, which I think is supposed to be 2019. We're at 400,000, and we just got done saying we're going to be $13,200 short on it. So I would either have adjusted the motion, the targeted amount, because we have in writing from Jerry that we can't fund it that way. So rather than putting guesstimates and partials and approximates up there, especially given the first year, let's tell them our target is going to be this, and this is how we expect to get to the target. So your motion to go to $23 is what's relevant to me. And the $90 makes sense. So support it.
All right, thank you, Alderman Stevenson. The one thing that I think we might be missing on all this is Gary is not factored in the money that's going to come in the next 5 years from the previous, this year, and the previous 4 years of assessments. So when you say a shortfall, there's not going to be a shortfall.
Isn't that going to debt service?
We are.
They both.
They do. They both
Right.
do. But Mike.
Already previously calculated debt service payment, I would assume. Right?
But I assume that we'll take in about $300,000 this year. We'll take in about $200,000 the following year, about $100,000 the next year, 75 and 50. In my calculations, that comes up to almost $625,000. So there is going to be no shortfall at $22. But it's good, like Todd says, it's going to go to debt service. But we're positive cash flow funded on this based upon those numbers. So just to be clear, and I know Kathy, said this deficit, there will be no deficit because those numbers have been factored in. Am I correct, Mike, or close? So we have $600,000 that is going to be collected over the next 5 years from the previous 5 years collections that are not factored in under Jerry's formula. Is that, Jerry, is that?
That's correct.
So even at $22, we are not facing a shortfall. Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. I thought we discussed at the budget meeting that if you had a property and you sold the property, even though you were getting that credit would not be given to the new homeowner. So you're on that 5-year plan where you get the $22 credit. You sell your property next year. The new homeowner starts over and does not get, because he did not pay the assessment. Why would you give that credit to him? I thought we discussed that. I'm looking for clarification there.
That was brought up as a potential amendment, from what I recall.
Right.
And it was brought up in committee. I don't think anyone acted on it, so it would be open, but that's another possibility. I think also, and I'm not going to have to ask about this, we can pass this thing tonight and make adjustments to it or down the road, Jim? Or?
Sure. Subsequent meetings in December or early January, before the first set of utility bills go out in 2019.
So things like that can be little idiosyncrasies, but you're right. We did have that discussion. Chris, did you have anything?
I was just talking with Jerry. We had a little conversation relative to that at the time of sale. I think, Mary, you were referring to stormwater utility fee, ERUs for the larger homes, and that we would grandfather those properties in at the higher fee until such time that they sold. That was for
stormwater. He is correct now that.
But it got rolled into the conversation about this, but memory serves
it
me
was
right.
meant for stormwater.
But it makes sense to me if I'm the homeowner and I was the one who was paying the assessment, why would the person who purchased it, why would they get the benefit since I paid the assessment? would save, I mean, that wouldn't happen very often, but I think that would be something that we should look at.
Someone could make that a selling point of selling their home, telling that new homeowner that they're not
Get $22.
or new business owner that they're not going to be faced with that for now 5 years, up to 5 years. So, yeah. Alderman Kunz.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. Whether you grandfather this in or you sell the house and it goes somewhere else. My understanding is having a couple of conversations is, and again, not to insult anyone over there, but that again, we don't have the clearest system to be able to sale in one department, shift it over and collect and get that data. And there was some challenges into understanding that and to getting that done. And so the simpler thing, it seemed like, is to keep with the utility. I don't care which way we go on that one. I do want a clarification on the motion. And as I'm looking at the resolution, we're talking about saying maximum TARF assessment and changing parcel to ERU and giving the dollar sign and changing 1980 to 90 being 90 ERUs. Is that correct?
Capping the TARF at a maximum of,
I guess I'm looking
with
at
the calculation of 90 ERUs per parcel assessed.
I'm looking at the resolution. I assume that a change would be made on the resolution itself.
Yes.
If you just page down, the resolution's right there if you're on the screen. And my only other comment would be I wouldn't put any dollar amount because it's just going to change. It's 90 ERU. I don't know if there's any other dollar amount, just confuses it, but.
All right, thank you. Well, I would just reiterate that we have the dollars coming in from assessments the next 5 years from properties that were recently assessed. Those are not calculated in the formula, so there will be no shortfall that Jerry put out in his memo because of that. And I think Director Easker has given his nod that that is the case. So I think that should help put that worry that we're being underfunded for the next 5 years or something. I just don't believe that we'll find ourselves in that situation. Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just doing it for clarity. If we know a number that we're shooting for and the calculations come out to that number, that's what I'm going. With these past assessments, I always thought that we'd be paying off debt that we had already incurred. And I know several of us are always concerned with what our debt is out there. And if we can have that go down, it's always a positive thing.
Yeah. What would people like to do?
You have a motion?
There's a motion. Yeah, there's a motion on the floor for Alderman Bates, seconded by Alderman Steele. Alderman Bates, so can you state your motion again?
To set the cap for maximum assessment per parcel, changing it from the 1980 as a number to at the calculated rate for 90 ERUs, and for the current year to set the, and it's not listed, I don't believe the $22, oh yes it is, right underneath that, the TARF fee for each ERU from 22 to 23.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor will vote aye, all opposed will vote no, using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 9-0. All right. Is there any other motions on this resolution? And like the city attorney pointed out, if there are some small issues that we deem necessary to take another look at in the very near future, I think that we should, because we may find some things. And we thought that we crossed the Ts and dotted the Is on everything, but this is a new proposal. And a lot of hard work was put into it by staff and by aldermen. And, we may find something here and there. But so if there are those things, any alderman can ask that they be put on the agenda, and we can do that. But the meat of this is as stated in the resolution currently. Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to state my support for this resolution. I know as we talked about many other things, we talked about particularly people that lived in smaller homes that the special assessment many times was twice what their property taxes would be. It became a difficult thing. Again, people coming in, having to take second mortgages to pay for a special assessment. It needed to change, and we are changing it. And I think that's a fabulous thing. There's bound to be a few bumps in the road, particularly in trying to do new things like this. But I think we're doing this all for the right reasons, and I think the impact will be real. And is it perfect? Can we do everything about what someone paid 5, 10, 20 years ago? We can't. All we can do is move forward as best we can and help in the best way we can. So I enthusiastically support this resolution.
All right, anyone else? Just for the record, Alderman Lundrum has made a point to ask that we continue our work on the utilities portion, the stormwater. It's a little bit more of a challenge for the water. So because of PSC, and it's a different separate utility in that. But again, I hope that staff is going to bring something back to us very soon, okay? So set it for the record. Everyone knows where I am on that, and we're going to continue to work on that. So thank you all very much for a good discussion and good suggestions. All right, there's a motion and a second to approve resolution 2018-24 as amended, which is now the resolution. That's what we're voting on. All in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no, using the roll call machine. That motion passes 9-0. Thank you very much. I think you all did a great job on this, and like I mentioned earlier, we're breaking new ground, and a lot of people, staff, and Council President Stevenson, and a lot of people worked hard on this, so thank you very much. All right. Item number 2 is consideration of resolution number 2018-25, adopting the 2019 operating budget and the 2019 capital improvements program budget for the city of Neenah.
I'm going to move for the adoption of resolution 2018-25, adopting the 2019 operating budget and 2019 capital improvement budget as submitted by the mayor and modified by the mayor at our second workshop session with the numbers for equalized value.
Second. Council President Stevenson moves, seconded by Alderman Hillstrom. If I may indulge the council just for a little bit, I'll try to keep it shorter than previous years, but this is always the most important document that we pass throughout the whole year. I mean, this is the document that sets the stage, sets the policies, sets the vision and the direction for this council and for this staff and for this community for the next year. So I think it's important just to give a quick overview of some of the things that are in this. I want to thank ahead of time each and every one of you. I asked people early if they had the opportunity to come and see me and talk about this, and many of you took advantage of that. For the people who are watching this at home, there has been over approximately 14 hours of actual council workshops where this common council, the entire common council, sat in a room, the Hauser room, many nights for periods, 4 hours here, 4 hours there, and they went over this thing line by line, section by section, asked questions of all the department heads and got the answers that they needed in order to either support this or to make changes. So I want to thank the council for working hard. And it's just not those 14 hours. I know people worked long and hard at home, many hours, reading it and looking at it and contacting staff and department heads to get the answers that they needed. So there's a lot of work goes into these budgets. So I appreciate you giving me a few minutes here just to talk about the 2019 budget. So Council President Stevenson and honorable members of the council and the citizens of the city of Neenah, once again, it's my pleasure to present to you my fifth budget, the 2019 operating and capital improvement budget. Each and every year, we're faced with numerous challenges due to levy limits, zero increases in shared revenue. We had a slight decrease in general transportation aids, and that makes it more difficult each and every year. And as I said in the city newsletter, it just doesn't seem to get any easier each and every year. The levy limits that the state has imposed, and I was part of one point, does restrict our ability to add additional employees and programming due to fixed costs, which increase year after year. Our total allowable general fund levy increase, the amount of levy increase that we can impose on our citizens, was $138,000. We provide services. That's what we do. We provide services to our taxpayers. They're the ones who pay the bills. And those services are estimated to be about 75% for salaries for labor. And so there's not much left for other things if you take out the high degree of labor costs because we provide a lot of services to our residents. And even with these challenges, the budget that we're about to work on tonight and hopefully pass provides a path to fiscal responsibility and fiscal discipline while still providing a wonderful quality of life to those residents who live here in the city. We're very fortunate to have numerous buildings, construction projects going on, which helps create new tax base in this community and more jobs for our citizens. I've often said that our ability to increase revenues is dependent upon growing our valuation so that we can further invest in this community and help our tax base. This budget still had the same guiding principles that you as council members and I as the mayor have had since I've been here 4 years ago. And that's our staff, our excellent staff and employees. We need to make sure that they're dealt with properly, that they're adequately compensated, that we look at our neighbors and peers and make sure we're paying them for a job well done and that they do a job that our citizens are proud of. Keeping that property tax levy below the amount that's allowed by the state. Keeping our municipal fees similar to what they were the previous year. And continue to plan for the future by putting dollars in economic development so that we can grow this community. And probably most importantly, continue to invest in our roads and our infrastructure. The more that the less we do, the more we fall behind in road reconstruction and construction. Regarding this budget, our department heads identified needs of just over $25.3 million for 2019. I'm requesting reductions over $300,000 to bring this final expenditure budget of just over $25 million. The tax levy is approximately $3.6 million. Including debt service, the proposed levy is just over $17.1 million, an increase of about 2.25%. The goal for 2019 was to maintain a tax rate that is basically flat for our taxpayers. As proposed, the final estimated assessed tax rate, depending on some final numbers that came in and any adjustments that this council makes, for property owners will go up about 1.50%. This translates to a property tax increase for city purposes of 0.14, 14 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation, and that means the owner of a house valued at $150,000 will see an increase in their property taxes of approximately $21. So a lot of things went into this. I mentioned earlier shared revenue and expenditure restraint, computer exemption aids, transportation aids from the state of Wisconsin. After all those things and all the hard work, we had a lot of decision making to do. We started out with an estimated 3.8% increase in our health care costs for city employees. I mentioned that fees remain relatively unchanged in this budget. One of the concepts that I've had that this council has tried to abide by is paying off more than we borrow in the current year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to propose that this year. And basically it comes down to the expenditure of $2.2 million in refuse trucks, garbage trucks, and cans, garbage containers for our new collection that we are doing, automated garbage collection, which is often in running and doing okay. So that's the reason by having to borrow those types of dollars that we're not able to meet that goal that I've had. But in the end, I'm proposing borrowing about approximately $8.8 million, and we're retiring about $8.2 million of old debt. The original request from department heads, so the needs and the wants, was over $9.7 million of needs that department heads have identified. So I lowered that by over $870,000. But it's very important to keep up with maintenance of roads, buildings, equipment, and infrastructure each and every year. So the good news is that at the end of 2018, and this is one of the highlights, and you all received the memo about 2 weeks ago from Director Easker, the debt load as a percent of our statutory limit will be 44.2%. This is down from 51.8% when I was first elected mayor. Our total debt, and that's what I know Alderman Lundgren is aware of, is our total debt, and she reminds me often, including the stormwater revenue, CDA lease revenue bonds, that has decreased from 76.8% to 61.6% in the same time frame. Our TIF districts have finally kind of met that where they're crossing, and we are projected to have a small surplus when our current TIF districts end. So those are all great things for citizens to know. Among other things, adding new employees. Always difficult to add new employees. And it's been difficult this year too. We've had 4 requests for new employees, the addition of 4 employees in the budget. I'm recommending 1 new position that will begin in October 2019, and that is for the police department's civilian evidence technician. I mentioned our TIF districts. I've included dollars in TIF 10 to explore and begin the process of looking at a new parking ramp somewhere to help our continued parking needs in this community. In addition, there's money allocated in TIF 9 to complete the purchase of the junkyard property on the south end of town off of Breezewood Lane on Highway 41. We're on the cusp of a couple of very large projects by private developers that will pay huge dividends into this community in the future. One such project that we're looking at is and there's money budgeted of $100,000 for a highly valued public-private partnership in the downtown area, while getting over $4 million of new increment in the downtown. Our commitment to our parks is evident. Washington Park has dollars allocated to do the final phase 3 and 4 of that renovation. Our police department and safety department, police and fire, whilst other communities are looking at cutting police and fire, we are maintaining our police and fire. Our new chief in the police department is doing an excellent job in getting officers out into the community and developing relationships throughout this city with our citizens and with our kids. Our Neenah Menasha Fire Rescue answers EMS calls each and every day in this community and is usually first on the scene to help people that have health issues in this community. Along with that, Gold Cross, which isn't a part of the city, they are there then to transport and to do the paramedic aid that a lot of these people need, but our Neenah Menasha Fire are there to stabilize patients and provide that first responder that they're trained to do to stabilize that patient. So I'm proud of both of them. We just talked for a long time about our road street assessment program. We need to continue to be aggressive in our road infrastructure schedule, because by delaying projects, we know the costs are only going up. But I'm pleased that earlier tonight, the days of residents receiving street assessments on average of $4,000 to $6,000 per household will end, and that the new Transportation Assessment Replacement Fund will make that happen. So thank you very, very much. Technology IS services continue to cost money. We have been a little bit behind the 8 ball, and we are being aggressive in catching up, utilizing GIS wherever we can to help future councils and help future mayors plan for the growth of this community. Our lean concept, our employees, we should be very proud of our employees and how they have grasped onto lean and have really done some great things on finding new processes to save dollars and help taxpayers and help the budget. The average wage increase in the city is about 2.25 wage increase depending upon employee performance reviews. A new salary plan is being completed by an outside consultant. So having a salary structure that is competitive with our neighboring peers is essential to retain good quality workforce. So there's been a lot of things that have gone into this budget. I appreciate the workshops, the work that was done in the workshops. I appreciate you listening to me tonight, and I look forward to hearing your suggestions on how to make this even better. These proposals in the budget are a collection of my priorities as the elected leader. I try very hard to listen to you, our elected officials, along with the citizens that I come into contact daily with. The purpose when I put this budget together was to prioritize and determine the best solutions. In many cases, there are different ways to achieve similar outcomes. I welcome each and every one of your input and ideas to enhance this document. I do want to take a moment to thank Mike Easker and Deb for their hard work in putting this budget together. And I look forward to tonight's work and getting this budget done. Renee won't have to come out at 1 o'clock in the morning, find me on the lazy boy with my budget on my lap, and me sleeping in the lazy boy. So there were a lot of those nights. So, and to the department heads out there and the staff who's out there, thank you for everything you've done, for educating me and making the council, answering all the tough questions on why you need what you need to properly operate your budgets and provide services to the citizens of this city. I think the citizens are well served throughout this community with all the different programming we have. And I hear that often from residents, so thank you. So with that, Alderman Stevenson, you made a motion, and there's a second, and we're ready to vote? Oh, guess not. Okay. All right. I don't know how would you like to start this?
Sure.
Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to request to add $750 to the Public Works Operations drop-off site budget to fund the cost of an additional drop-off site attendant, and I so move.
There's a motion by Alderman Erickson.
Oh,
Oops.
Tammy made the motion.
Made the motion, and somebody had.
I seconded it.
There we go. Alderman Erickson moves, seconded by Alderman Stevenson. We add $750 to the, here's my list here.
To the Public Works Operations drop-off site
There you go.
to fund the cost of an additional drop-off site attendant.
Thank you very much. Okay. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a couple ways we could fund the $750. We could, in essence, add to the tax levy and $750, or we could have it come from the fund balance that exists in the recycling fund. I would suggest that we take it from the fund balance that exists in the recycling fund. That's okay, Alderperson Erickson?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Right. Any other comments? Questions? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no using the roll call machine. That motion passes 9-0. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I had indicated as a result of the workshops that I was considering doing something with the funding source for the Finance Department security and ergonomics improvements. I don't intend to make any motion on that. So I would, so moving on to the second item that came from the workshop sessions, I would move to allocate remaining dollars from the Highway 41 sign project to offset or reduce 2019 borrowing to the extent of about, I think, $80,000. I think the project was 15 plus some. Okay.
If I could, Alderman Stevenson, the current highway project is about 25,000.
I'll move
We had
That's fine. I knew there was-
anticipated perhaps utilizing funds to construct a new sign at the entry into the industrial park, which we build another 25. But that's obviously up to the discretion of the council. Whether
So where would the extra 25,000 be from insertion in the budget? Is that in the 5-year plan?
it would be carried forward from these funds. That again at your discretion. So that hasn't really been discussed other than at the direction of the mayor.
So, with respect for that, and the fact that I didn't bring that up at the workshop sessions, I'm going to move to allocate $50,000 of unfunded balance that was borrowed for the sign project, and use that to offset 2019 borrowing. And in TIF 9. Now I'll make that.
Alderman Stevenson makes the motion. Is there a second? Alderman Lundrum seconds it. So the motion is for $50,000, reduce the 2019 borrowing in TIF 9 by $50,000. Just so people understand who are watching, there was originally $100,000 put in that the council agreed and approved to, I believe, last year or the year before, that for some signage on Highway 41. That is coming. I don't know if it's going to be up yet this year. They are working on it, and it's going to be up first week of December. You'll see it when you get off the Breezewood exit. Northbound on 41, and it's pretty cool looking, so I think people are going to like it. And credit to Director Hayes for coming up with that. And then in addition, there has been some talk, and I had it, I believe, in one budget and discussions with Jerry about putting a very nice, attractive sign letting people know about our business park and our industrial park on Bell Street. So I appreciate Alderman Stevenson, you allowing that. Any of that money would have to come, as I understand it, would have to come to the council to be spent when there is a proposal to do that, correct? Director Easker? So if there be a proposal for that sign using those funds that Todd's leaving, that would have to come to committee and get a council approval.
Would it be a change of purpose of what
Change
those
of
funds
purpose.
were for? Yes, sir.
Okay, but you're giving us the option, and I think that is very much appreciated. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up then, I'm assuming we'll see that then in spring at the 5-year capital plan, and that the request for funding for the $25,000 would be identified as carry forward, so it's all straightforward and transparent.
In April.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yep, we'll do that. Thank you. Consideration. Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this amendment. It's one, I know we could probably do different things with the signs or the money, but we love our carry forwards, and we've got little pieces here and there and here. And anytime we can reduce our borrowing, we're going to go to borrowing pretty soon, I would think, based on rates. It'd be nice to take a closer look at any dollars that we've already borrowed for that we can use to reduce our borrowing, and do that before we go to borrowing. And I know it's nice to have a little extra cash sitting around. We all like to have that at home, but it's one where we've done some great work, as the mayor's pointed out, on our debt service and reducing that down. We got to keep on top of that, and I think this is another great example.
All right, appreciate the comments. Anyone else? And I will say we're going to I estimated 100,000 for that sign, and Chris got it done for 25,000. So we're going to have him do more projects.
Buy one, get one free.
So
I haven't seen it yet, so I hope you didn't jinx it. So we'll see what it looks like when it goes up.
So that's the marker to the rest of you folks out there. So when you come in at a quarter of what you had hoped for. So, but hopefully it's going to be a very attractive sign and something that's going to make Neenah stand out as people are driving northbound. So thank you very much. So there's a motion and a second to reduce the unspent dollars, reduce 2019 borrowing in TIF 9 by $50,000 by Alderman Stevenson, second by Alderman Lundrum. All in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 9-0.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to remove the dollars for evidence custodian in the police budget. And that's a move.
Alderman Coons moves to remove $23,000 from the police operation wages, fringes, fringes for a new evidence clerk. Is there a second? Anyone? Second?
Sure, I'll second.
There you go. Alderman Stevenson seconds it. On the motion, Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I made this, and with probably the thought that it probably wouldn't survive this council. I wasn't even sure if it get a second even before I asked it, and I would be fine with that as well. But it is one where when I'd be fine with that. First of all, I think because Chief Olson, I think, has done an incredible job. He sent an email a little bit ago, and I thought his determination and what he's trying to do with the department is admirable. And if he would have asked for this last year instead of last year, we added a sworn officer, I would have been all over this, because I said then I'd much rather get in somebody else who's going to do all these other work that we're using officers to do, even from crossing guard, whatever else. I would have supported 2 at that point. but that was not what the request was. It was for a sworn officer. Every department either asked for a new person or should have asked for another additional person this last budget, and they were all turned down. So it's one of those where I get it. We all want to be efficient, but I've seen some incredible things happen. I see at the library where they needed more help, and what they do, they got in a ton of volunteers. I set up a plan. I don't know how many FTE equivalents they get, but it's a lot of people in there. In finance, they restructured to be more efficient. At the Park and Rec, they're looking at doing restructuring again and to get more efficient. I love efficiency, but I think what we need to do is, how do we do it for what we've got? We only get a small increase, $130,000. That doesn't cover just giving everybody a cost of living raise. So it's difficult, and I don't know how we move forward. And so that's why I put this forward. Again, I'm not going to lose any sleep if this doesn't get past it, because there's some incredible work going on there. But it is one where I wanted to push back a little bit on that one, and I leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Alderman Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supporting leaving this in, and I'd like Chief to come up and explain why this is in and how it will save us money in the long run.
We are doing some other restructuring.
There you go.
We are doing other restructuring within the department that it's really internal how we're doing it. We had asked for the sworn officer 2 years ago, and then last year asked for this position, but it was stopped with the mayor, which was fine. The reason why we want this position so much now is because when you look at our department, if you come there every single day, it's not close enough. I feel like I'm really loud. Better? If you come to our police department every single day, you see that everyone is doing their job. And everyone has secondary jobs, whether it's honor guard or supervising the community service aides or whatever it is. Everyone has a secondary job. But the people who are doing evidence now, it's not just an hour here, an hour there. It's half their day every day. And that's the lieutenant of investigations is getting paid a lot of money to do digital media, when it should be a civilian person getting paid roughly a third of what the lieutenant is. So that lieutenant is spending 4 hours of his day every day doing digital media, and then having to stay a little bit later to finish his job, which is costing us more money in overtime. A lot of times he does it for free, and that's his choice. Amanda Moe, who's doing our evidence now, she spends 4 or more hours every day of her shift working on evidence, and then if you hear when her side is working, their calls are stacking. I know the mayor listens to the radio and he hears that. So we're not getting to calls fast enough. One person in our department makes a big difference because we're a smaller department. So I see this as a way for us to be much more efficient. And also with our accreditation coming up next month, we will be successful in the future with that as well.
Thank you for the explanation. Alderman Hillstrom? Oh, so in addition to that, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but the preservation of evidence is, with technology and everything, and with court cases, and it's becoming increasingly more important to preserve evidence because with appeals and with people can, some things we have to keep a very long time, so it's important to do that. And then in addition, as I understand it, and the reason I approved this one, not that it was, more important than the others, but it is kind of because our officers are dealing with things that we never dealt with before. And lots of time this evidence is dangerous drugs, fentanyl, things that are going that if it's properly not handled properly, the simple inhalation of this drug could have dire consequences to our employees. So it's important to have someone who's trained and someone who has the knowledge to properly preserve and secure this evidence. Correct?
Correct. And when I started my law enforcement career over 20 years ago, we put things in drawers and lockers and never thought about it again. And that's the way it was back then. You know, we knew what we knew and didn't know what we didn't know. And if we did that today, the cities would be sued, the police departments would be sued. We have to be much more professional in everything we do, and especially evidence, because that's person's property. And if we're not accountable for those every single day, then we're all could be set up for failure, and that's what we do not want. We want to be efficient, and we also want to be standardized, and we don't want to be susceptible to lawsuits.
Thank you. Yeah, it's different than the old days.
Much more
I have to
different.
come clean because I think at one point in my life we got fireworks that were probably evidence from my dad,
Probably.
who was a police officer. So
Probably.
we had a great fireworks show that year up at the cottage. So.
Things are a little bit different in 2018 and 19.
I think there's a statute of limitations. And,
I don't know if you ever won an election.
and Dad is not here no longer, but he was a valued member of the police department. But we had a heck of a fireworks show.
I'm
so,
sure.
That doesn't happen anymore. So, I mean, it's a much different world than we live in. So thanks for your support, Todd. But I do want to just say thank you very much, Chief. And with regards to these open positions, I do want to say the fact that, IS wanted 2 positions for GIS, and this council is making GIS a priority. And so it's very difficult to not, look at that. But we're going to try and we're going to continue using what we have up there. And I hope there'll be an amendment later, as I understand it. But and we're going to take care of that. But in the future, we are going to have to look at GIS in the Dulles office with our city attorney. I think the workload has steadily increased for the city attorney. This council saw that. We now have an assistant city attorney, so we have 2 people who are working on a lot of development. Neenah does things big, and we do things, these developments and that. They take a lot of time to do these memorandum of agreements and understanding and things like that. So Jim had asked for a clerical person because, once again, it doesn't pay to have someone who's highly paid doing a lot of this clerical. So we're going to have some discussions on how we can make it work one more year in the office with the clerk and deputy clerk and Joni, who is my assistant. But they're not easy answers. But this position, I felt as though they made a good case for it, and it's a civilian position, so I recommended it, and I would ask you to approve it. Todd, did you have your?
Yeah, I did.
Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I don't intend to support the amendment.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor of Alderman Coons' motion to remove, and the number, I apologize, the number is 14,400. Director Easker, who has not made one mistake since I've been here in 5 years, informed me that there was error, and the number is 14,400.
Yeah, and just to let you know, I always want to make sure my assistant comptroller, Andy Call, is here so that I can blame him for any
Did you
error.
throw him under the
But
bus?
in this case, it's on me.
Oh, okay. Andy, he's not throwing you under the bus. So the number is 14,400 and not 23,000. So the motion, Alderman Coons, is to remove 14,400 from the police operations wages fringes for new evidence clerk. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no using the roll call machine. That motion fails. 8 noes, 1 aye. Any other motions? Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to a IS department requested adjustment, I'm going to make a motion to add $16,800 to IS operations temporary wages, remove $5,000 from IS operations outside software services, remove $3,000 from IS operations capital outlay computer software, which would leave either a increase in tax levy or some other funding source in the amount of $8,800. My recommendation would be to remove, to lessen the fund balance in the internal service fund, which you can find on page 331. Remove that, reduce that from $45,849 and remove and lessen it by the $8,800. That would be my motion.
Alderman Stevenson moves, seconded by Alderman Lendrum, to add $16,800 to the IS operations budget as he identified the funding sources, including the internal service fund of $8,800, along with the two that are stated in the motion. Alderman Stevenson?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Okay. I would just like to thank Director Wenninger for being creative and finding some additional dollars. And unlike Director Easker, this was, I did not catch this when I took out the previous two positions. I would have expected Mike to catch this. So I...
Who would have expected Andy?
So, no, this is, sorry, Mike, this is totally on me. I made this error, and I had told Director Wenninger that I would try and fix this. And so this is on me, and I appreciate the council considering fixing this, because this is a necessary, we have a person who is doing this work and is doing an excellent job, and we'd like to continue with that for another year at least. Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this. I'm just trying to get my arms around the funding source. And this is a fund set up in IS, kind of unclear why as I'm reading it, but it's probably a really good reason, which this year is already in a deficit, but we still have a fund balance there. Mike, do you see any issue from a long-term standpoint?
No, I think it's an appropriate use of those funds. It's typically should be a fund that zeroes out, but because of things we discussed, how it's charged back to other departments, kind of built to have a little bit of a fund balance there, and that gives us a little flexibility to do things like this.
Good find then. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Stevenson, what page was the IS fund on again?
Page 331.
All set?
Thank you.
Okay. So Alderman Stevenson moves to add $16,800 to IS operations temporary wages, which would be done by removing $5,000 from IS operations outside software services and remove $3,000 from IS operations capital outlay computer software, which leaves $8,800, and he would take $8,800 from the internal service fund and apply it to that. The net out is zero. Appreciate the motion. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 9-0. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. One last amendment. I would, in 2018, we had a couple of capital projects out at the police department. One was phase one of the evidence room. This budget shows another $50,000 of requested dollars, which I'm supportive of spending. The second project that we did this year was the roof fund, and we had some unspent dollars there. So rather than having those unspent dollars for the roof fund just fall into the facilities fund, I'm going to ask that, and because we had a little bit of overrun in the evidence room phase one, I'm going to ask that $15,000 of borrowed dollars from the 2018 police roof fund go to offset the need to borrow $50,000 for the evidence room in phase two. That would be my motion. So the net effect would be to reduce 2019 borrowing by $15,000.
Second.
There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Bates. On the motion, Motion by Alderman Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Bates. Anyone have any, Alderman Stevenson? Nope. Okay. Anyone else have any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no using the roll call machine. That motion passes 9-0. Any other motions from the floor? Motions or comments? Or motions right now. Alderman Erickson?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a potential budget amendment I'd like to add, and I'm not quite sure on the dollar amount, but I think it is $1,000 to the city council budget for the cell phone reimbursement fund. Alderman or Council President Stevenson sent out a memo stating that he is reimbursed $15 a month, and I think we should have everybody reimbursed $15 a month for their cell phone use. We use it for photographs. We use our cell phones for correspondence with each other, and I think it should just be straightforward that everybody is reimbursed. And I don't think it should be an option. I think it should just be a $15 reimbursement, as opposed to you can or you can't, and it's just fair for everybody. So I would like to propose that amendment.
All right. Alderman Erickson moves.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Alderman Erickson moves to add $1,000 to the city council budget in the cell phone use line item.
Right. Thank you.
There's a second. Alderman Stevenson seconds it. All right. Discussion. I will just remind Alderman Erickson, this has been a policy for some time that aldermen could ask for reimbursement. I think that maybe we got a little lax on telling people that this was available to the alderman. And I agree with you that aldermen use their phones for conducting business, for getting on the internet, checking their emails. They constantly are sending me pictures of things throughout the city. So people are using their phones. So this is a benefit that has always been there. It just maybe we got a little lax on not making sure the new alderman knew about this opportunity. So I'm okay with it, and I agree with it. I just want to be sure. So do you want to make it, they still have to sign up for it, or they automatically get it?
I think they should automatically get it. I think because everybody does use their cell phone for city use, it's an automatic thing. I mean, when the new aldermen came on the council, I don't think they were informed about this.
Okay.
And I think it's something that I think it should be all for one, one for all.
That's fine. I just, okay. And like any salary benefit, someone could, if they not take it. But the intention is that this would be available to every alderman, which they would take it.
Yes.
If they deem so that they want to take it. All right. I appreciate the explanation. Alderman, go ahead.
I just want to remind the alderman that the extent that you are using your personal cell phone for city-related business, there is a potential public records issue in terms of if there's a request for information that could be on there. So you have to be mindful.
Okay. Good reminder. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. Alderperson Erickson's motion identifies an addition to the operating budget, which would then need an offsetting revenue source. So our choices here are multiple. We could increase the levy by $1,000. We could increase the contribution from fund balance, which would be my preferred methodology. My goal would be not to raise the tax levy. So, if that's okay with you, let's make that the assumption. Okay.
So the funding mechanism would be from,
Increase allocation of fund balance.
okay? And the author of the amendment's
fine.
fine with that. And the second is fine. Okay, thank you for the explanation. Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the idea of this is fine. The execution, I'm a little more concerned about. I don't use my cell phone for city business purposefully. There's a whole open records issue and all those other kind of things. And I think what should happen is anybody who wants to apply for it or get it or whatever it is, do that, they get it, and we see where it nets out next year, and then we adjust the budget. And if we're going to take it from any fund, I take it from the IS fund, and because they raised our IS fees. But
2.5 times the highest in City Hall.
At least I get a little something out of that. But that's that great fund you found. But I think everyone who wants to get reimbursed. It might have been too that the council president got 15, everybody else got 10. I don't know what the rule was, and so I look back to what the original rule even is.
I just had a premonition that Director Barber would have something to say. So, you do come on up.
She texted you on her phone.
Actually, I did because you didn't see me waving.
I know.
I just want to point out that the application process is preferred because in order to get the stipend, you're sort of waiving some rights, like Jim alluded to. Your phone may have to be, possessed if, there's some sort of open records request. We have to have access to certain things, and not everyone across the board is going to be comfortable with that. So in exchange for paying the $15, you have to sign off on this document. So what I will get all the information out to you, and we'll put it on the standard new hire process for aldermen. But I would just ask that rather than us put it through, what you're signing up for, and you're comfortable signing off on it.
I think all members should probably. It's a necessary part of doing your job if you feel it is, and they'll send you the documents, and we'll get people signed up. One thing is things like password. If you're going to use a city telephone. Phone, you have to have a password protected, right? So that if someone gets your phone, they can't get into it and get some of the information, city-related information. So there are a few little nuances, but nothing huge. So if that's okay, that's okay. So
sure.
Good. Anyone else? All in favor of the motion? Vote aye. All opposed? Vote no. Motion and the funding source. That motion passes 6-3. Any other motions on the 2019 budget? Previous years, we've had Mike do a running total.
Won't be too hard on Levy.
Todd, can you do that?
I can do that.
No, Mike, according to my quick calculations in my head, there's been no changes to the...
Not to the operating budget.
Yeah, right. To the operating budget, no. To the borrowing amount,
right.
Yes. So we've reduced that borrowing down to just over 8.7 billion. Still borrowing more than we're paying off, but that number is now under 600,000.
Right. But the operating levy has not changed at this point. Is there anyone else with any other amendments? Anyone else? I am going to, if this is all right with the council, there was a request from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question at this point?
Good, Mayor, and I'll let the department heads finish. What I would have to say really won't affect anything there. It's more effective.
Okay.
I'm willing to wait around.
So you're willing to what? Okay, well, we're going to finish this first then, okay? All right, thank you. There is a motion to approve resolution number 2018-25, adopting the 2019 operating budget and 2019 capital improvements program budget as amended. for the city of Neenah? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no, using the roll call machine. That motion passes 9-0. Congratulations, and thank you all very, very much for your hard work. You all worked very hard on this. I appreciate it. So item number 3 is any other 2019 budget matters that may be come before the council. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a brief comment to our department heads, our staff. Again, for their patience with the council as we deliberate the budget. I want to give credit to Mayor Crawford. This is probably one of the smoothest, probably non-controversial budgets that we've dealt with in a number of years, which makes the process easier. But with that said, it didn't keep us from discussing, debating, and analyzing well over 13 hours of workshop time. So congratulations to the council on this process. More importantly, congratulations to our dedicated department heads and staff who supported the council in our efforts to do that. And I think we did well. Thank you.
Alderman Boyett.
Somebody hit the button.
Oh,
Okay.
that might have.
Anyone else have any comments? Being no other comments, just so folks understand now, we have scheduled we had a backup plan in case tonight, didn't go well, or there were questions, or if citizens showed up and asked questions or made suggestions. We always want to have a backup where we don't rush the budget if necessary. And that has been done before, where we've come back the following night. And I think it's a good procedure to have. But when things run smooth and the railroad stays on time and everything, we got our work accomplished. So tomorrow night's meeting that has been previously noticed properly will be canceled, correct? And then because next week's Thanksgiving, and we had talked to everyone, Jerry and Mike had both said that there was no pressing business as far as other types of things that are coming before the council. There was no need to have committee meetings, and thus we don't have to meet next week unless something would come up between Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then we would, but the goal and the intent is we don't find it at this point necessary for the council to meet the night before Thanksgiving. So enjoy your time off. You worked hard and you deserve some time off for the next couple of weeks, and enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday with your family. So with that, I will kind of deviate. If it's hearing no objection, is there anyone from the audience that would like to make a comment? Anyone besides Dwight?
Didn't realize I would be this early.
Just kidding. Go ahead, Dwight.
Dwight Kerr, 434 High Street, Neenah. Good afternoon, evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm probably a little late to the party, but we were out of state for a while, and I have some questions that I realize it's late. But it's in regards to the TARF. And I know the TARF is somewhat related to the wheel tax, and I'm wondering what the advantages of a wheel tax are and what the advantages of a TARF are. I kind of read a little bit of the proposal ordinance, and I saw that trails and bike paths were going to be included in funding for this. And I question why we would include trails. They are more recreational than transportation. And as far as bike lanes or bike paths, I'd like to see if the city of Neenah would be a leader in that area and start to develop protected bike paths rather than just placing a strip of paint on the highway. It's the cities that have gone to bike paths fairly strongly are using protected bike paths. I see that there seems, I heard something about if we didn't have money in our TARF fund, we would take it from somewhere else and then pay that back. In 40-some years of working in manufacturing, if I had a budget, I stuck to it. I was never given an alternative to take it from somewhere else. I think it's important that our city do that also. I have a question. What would it cost us to administer our TARF? I don't know what that is, but I got some numbers from the DOT website. And for the fiscal year 2017, July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, as far as a wheel tax would be concerned, there are 33,827 registered vehicles in the city of Neenah that it would apply to. If I took that same $22 that we have approved right now for our TARF, that would give us a dollar amount for that fiscal year. We'd have $754,600 in that wheel tax fund. Their fee for administering it is 17 cents per registration, which comes to $5,750.59. That would leave us $748,849 to do with our road repairs. I know there's talk about doing something with sewers and water. I can tell you that as a citizen, one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen is we do a road repair and turn around and the next year there's a patch on it because something failed. Just doesn't make any sense to me. That pretty much, I think, covers everything that I had to mention today. Thank you.
All right, well, we appreciate you coming tonight, Dwight, and listening to this. I will tell you, I will give you the memorandum from Jerry Kaiser with regards to the transportation fee proposal. This is a really valuable piece of information, and it lays out some of the reasons for doing a transportation fee. This council is elected not to do a wheel tax, as some other communities have done. I will say, with your numbers on Department of Transportation with the registered vehicles, I would caution that I believe those numbers are probably 54956 zip codes, could be, because that's what happened in Appleton. So that would encompass town of Neenah, town of Menasha, everyone who lives in that zip code. So those numbers probably wouldn't be what you said. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing. So we have made the decision tonight. You might be a little bit late, but there are some differences. I will give you this and also invite you to come visit me anytime, and I'd love to sit down and answer any further questions that you have with regards to the transportation assessment plan proposal. I think the council listened to you on trails and everything, and we'll keep them in mind, okay? Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, have a great holiday, folks. There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Boyette. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Broadcasts of the City of Neenah Common Council meetings are produced by University Studios of the University of Wisconsin, Fox Valley. Neenah residents can get information about City Council meetings, City Committee meetings, meeting agendas, and other documents via the City website, www.neenahgov.org. Neenah residents can express their opinions about city issues or about these broadcasts by contacting the mayor's office, contacting their city alderman, or by completing the electronic feedback form on the city website, www.neenahgov.org. All public portions of the meetings are recorded in entirety and are not edited for playback.